Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Big Bros podcast. My name is Jeremy. Welcome if it's your first time joining us. I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Ilan. How you going, mate?
I'm pretty good. Can't complain. Feeling good on this lovely Saturday. So, yeah, how about yourself?
I'm well, yeah. I've had a nice week as well. Trudging along, finishing uni in 2 weeks. Life is good. Looking ahead at some summer plans, so I'm getting pretty geared up, which is nice. So
You're getting pretty geared up.
pretty geared up for a nice summer. Yeah, just discussing some summer plans with some friends. So look to get away before starting full-time work next year. So that's me, mate. But tell me about yourself in terms of what's this week been for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good. Been exercising quite a bit.
I love it.
Working a lot as well, which has been good. I picked up jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So,
oh, wow. You sound a bit like Chris Williamson there.
No, not even. Just, by all means, I'm just getting choked out the whole time, getting my arms, being just physically dominated by people who have done this sport for years on end, even though I might be much bigger than them, and they're just flipping me over, and it's a jolly old time. But it's good fun. It's a great form of fitness, and it's something I wanted to do this year, but I just didn't have time until I finished my study. So
sounds good, mate.
That's been great.
Sounds a bit like Twister almost, bit of tactical Twister.
A little
bit of character building. So good on you, mate. Something new, which is good.
Yes.
Now, leading into this week's topic, episode 40 today, already into the 40s. How's that?
I know.
Pat on the back for us.
I reckon we're going to have a mid-40s midlife crisis,
No.
Yeah, and in the podcast sense, I reckon that might mean upgrading the camera.
Yeah.
That might mean getting cooler mics, maybe a new different set. So if whoever's listening to this, tell us what you reckon about our setup. Would you like us to have a different sort of camera angle, different microphones? Let us know. We'd love to hear what you guys think.
That's it.
But
Just upping the game up.
I reckon so. But without further ado, you're talking about the fact that summer's coming up.
Yeah.
And a lot of events happen in summer, especially for young people. So take it away and explain what our episode is today and how it relates.
Yeah, well, as you guys can see from the title, we want to be talking about pressure and pressure involved with sexual activity. Something that we feel became quite relevant, especially around like 19, 20, like you're leaving school, schoolies is happening, you just finished year 12, you're getting to the Gold Coast, or you're going to Rye, or you're going to Byron, or something like that if you're living in Australia, and it's a time where you're around your friends and the experiences and the parties that you're having are all good and well, but a big theme that also goes hand in hand with schoolies and summer and parties and everything is the hookup culture and the nature of the hookup culture surrounding that. And look, whilst it's all good and fun and hopefully safe and just enjoyable for the people that are involved with whatever it is they want to be doing, it does come with certain responsibilities, a lot of responsibilities. And it also can be a time where for the people that don't want to be involved in sexual activity or those sexual behaviors that others might be getting involved with, it can be a bit of an overwhelming time for them, perhaps, and a time where, maybe they're copping some peer pressure or they're being told to do things that they might not want to do. And we don't want that. None of us want to experience that, and none of us want to see our friends experiencing that. So how do you think this is something that we can tackle and we can vocalize and we can speak about, especially in our friendship groups, so that we're aware of it first and foremost, and then we're in a space where we can talk about it amongst our friends so that we don't have to feel so apprehensive when there are times where we might feel pressured to do things sexually, perhaps.
So it's a good question. How do we get to the point where one feels confident enough to have this sort of discussion? And I think it goes without saying, and this is something I've preached a lot on this show, is things like sex, things like taking drugs, things that require some level of risk. Whenever someone's engaging in that, it should be done purely from a point of intrinsic desire to complete that activity or do that event or do whatever. Sex is literally no different to any of those things. And truthfully speaking, when we're younger, we're going to be experiencing a lot of peer pressure with drinking, going to parties, a myriad of things. And we've spoken about peer pressure before. But the thing about sex is that a lot of people, and we'll get into the reasons why, but if you can almost cultivate a feeling of comfort within someone that they can decide to have sex on their own terms, they don't feel pressured, that will go a long way, and we'll get into it. But you mentioned stuff about schoolies and the major hookup culture that's existent there. And I wanted to do a bit of research today, and apparently I did a study back in 2011 which surveyed 500 school leavers, what a term, at the week-long party on the Gold Coast last year, revealing that 1/4 of boys and 4% of girls had sex with multiple partners on schoolies. So, when asking what schoolies entailed, the results that were reported indicated things like getting very drunk, having a hangover, and hooking up. These weren't just listed as expectations, but things that were achieved following the kind of the pre-survey and the post-survey. This was done back in 2011. I doubt things have changed that much between then, so I feel like the same expectations are still pretty much there. Now, what we're presenting here is genuinely not us condemning it, because it sounds like we're almost saying, how dare them have fun, how dare them, have this experience after they've worked so hard in school. No, it's not. It's not to do with that. What it is just us illuminating the reality that expectations. This is what goes on, and this is the expectations of hookup culture, especially in things like schoolies and in events such as party destinations. It's just a thing, and you can't defeat that, and we can't, tell people otherwise, because that's what you want to do, and the power of the people have spoken. But whilst many go into these environments with such expectations, there are those who are not comfortable in pursuing certain sexual activities because they're simply not ready for it, and they may do so because of peer pressure, and then they therefore may feel quite pressured to do it even if they themselves don't want to do it. And there's a lot of literature now, and rather not even the literature, but a lot of media now talking about importance of consent. And whilst people have always known how important consent is, I think there's been more educational workshops now rolled out across Australian schools talking about the importance of it. Because as soon as you can educate people and destigmatize the conversation of sex, it allows people to actually be honest about it. Because oftentimes if you're in a friendship group and one person says, like everyone's sexually active in that group, and you're feeling like you're the individual that's getting the pressure from other members of the group to say, like, why haven't you slept with anyone yet? Why haven't you hooked up with anyone yet? You yourself may not be comfortable to do so, but that social pressure, that peer pressure will eat at you, and it can really leave you feeling quite isolated, especially if you don't want to partake in those activities.
Exactly. And I think we really need to tread carefully with things like this, especially with our friends, and not putting the pressure on them, because this pressure that they might be feeling from a sexual perspective can then eat away at them in different areas of their life, perhaps, and give them that sense of maybe they might not feel so supported by their friends for areas in whichever realm it might be, whether it's jobs, whether it's, just getting out into the world and wanting to discover something. That lack of confidence really might cut deep, and it could start from just a simple conversation of, why aren't you sleeping with that person? Or, I've been hooking up with this person. What have you been doing?
Yeah, it's like, is there something wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, as if you wouldn't want to get with him. He's so hot, or she's so hot. Like, it's almost as if you are forbidden to have your own autonomy in this situation.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And, why would you want to put that pressure on a friend of yours? If they're a true friend and you really do care about them, why would you want to put that pressure on them, and with the thought of knowing that it can then relate into different areas of their life as well and affect them in other areas of their life? It's just detrimental, and it's just something that should not be done at all. But the reason why I feel like some people do it is probably just because they feel like it's a flex, right? There's always that person in that friendship group. I'm thinking back in, the times where clubbing was new, going to parties was new. There was always that one person that would be boasting about, who they wanted to hook up with, or how many people they might have hooked up with, going on a night out at a club. And, sometimes it might have been true what they got up to. Other times it was probably a whole lot of crap as well. But why do they do it? Probably because they just feel like it's a flex. It seems like it's desirable for other people if they know that, there's this person that is sexually attractive to a whole bunch of other people. So there must be something really going for them. So I feel like it's just kind of pedestalizing yourself and putting yourself in this space where other people can hopefully see that you're a valuable character and a valuable person and someone that's wanted. It's like that feeling of validation almost.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's so many reasons why we might place pressure on young people, or why young people place pressure on one another to become sexually active. And one reason, just outside of the whole notion of peer pressure, is the fact that it's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Like having a baptism, like having a bar bat mitzvah, having a wedding, a myriad of other rites of passages. Becoming sexually active is the transitional stage from, childhood into adulthood, because you're now of the age where you can procreate. And, I'm going to sound like an evolutionary psychologist again because I can't help myself. But that's truthfully why I think sex and such an activity like that is treated with so much pedestalization. It's because it is, in a way, a very obvious rite of passage. Whilst there's no ceremony, like I know there are cultures in the world that will have, sexual ceremonies to almost like commemorate the fact that, this person is now transitioning from, child to man or woman. It's funny because it is a universal thing. Wherever you go, it's always going to be topical. And the thing is, the rite of passage of it being just like a ceremony or an event, it's an important stage of someone's life.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's something that's important and it has lots of significance, that means you're more likely to treat it with such kind of respect.
You're going to treat it with, well, we hope so. We hope so. I think being a rite of passage, being just a means of growing up almost, is just what it is, what it's about when you start being sexually active, in your late teens, in your early 20s. It's just a moment where you, just start to feel more like an adult. And then what comes with that is sometimes praise from your friends, praise from maybe the people that you're having those experiences with. But it's important to know that people are going to experience those things at different stages, and experiencing those things, whether it's in your late teens, whether it's in your early 20s, whether it's in your mid 20s, everyone's situation is different. And it's important to know that, because there are people in your friendship group that might not want to be doing the same things sexually that you might be getting up to. And that's completely okay, because everyone has their own wants and needs, their own reasons why they want to or not want to do things. So just make sure that, you're gentle and soft with the topic, and you're never denigrating the person for not being at the level that you're at. And this also goes for relationships as well. I think it's important to note that in relationships, you might be dating someone that might have had more sexual experience than maybe you had, right? And that's okay too. But it's important to know that you don't want to come from a place of judgment. It's always a topic that should be treated gently and soft. And ultimately, that is where the person is going to feel like they can be most comfortable with you too.
It's funny because the way we're talking about this whole topic of sex is with this great sense of caution. We have to be incredibly cautious and aware of this topic because, it carries some great consequences. So it got me reading a little bit the last few days because I was curious about this episode. And what I found was that, up until the sexual revolution in the 1960s, sex was very much treated as with one purpose, which was just for pure procreation. Some would say the whole purpose of mankind or humankind is that you are simply put on this earth to procreate, and that's your sole purpose. And if you're taking that line of thinking, you wouldn't necessarily associate sex with anything other than that. You wouldn't associate it with pleasure as a form of connection building. You would literally think of it as you would a biologist or any sort of person who, you would look at it as from like a mechanical lens.
Yeah.
50% my DNA, 50% your DNA, and we have our offspring.
Yeah.
But up until, or rather after the sexual revolution, we were able to decouple not just, sexual procreation, but rather being able to have sex without consequences. No limited chance of getting HIV or an infection. No complete reduction in the amount of pregnancies as well because of contraceptives like the pill and condoms. Interestingly though, and I read somewhere, given what we knew sex was for prior to the sexual revolution, people were automatically way more cautionary about it because they understood the risks that were involved when you were engaging in any form of sexual activity. So that part of our brain is still it's ingrained in us that we know that if you're procreating with someone or if you're having sex with someone, there is an expectation for you to stay with that person. That's what at least was drilled in prior to the 1960 sexual revolution. But nowadays, we're still not going to, just because you can decouple sexual pleasure from the procreation side of things doesn't mean that we look at sex as any less, important. It's still a taboo, right? It's still a topic that is, no matter how much destigmatization is done, it's still a topic with great taboo. A lot of people are very uncomfortable to speak about it. And that's not me saying to demonize them. The reason that's the case is because it was literally treated as such a big deal years ago for the last, throughout the entire evolution of humankind that, you can't really socially engineer people out of that. You genuinely can't, because if it carries such a big deal, it's part of your brain, part of that reptilian brain, as we'd say.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And look, whilst it's still, probably as taboo as it was then, it'll probably always be a little bit of a taboo topic. I think we've gotten better at talking about it, especially in this generation.
Sorry, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is it worth? I want to play a bit of devil's advocate here. Do you think it's worth having sex as what's the pros and cons of treating sex as like a taboo topic versus not? Because I'll give you an example quickly. I think that the con of having it as a taboo is that you're less likely to have really important conversations about things like consent, about things that you're comfortable with. The pro of it is that you at least keep it a little bit more sacred. It seems a little bit more private, bit of mystery, bit of excitement, right? If someone's not freely talking about their sexual activity, the human mind can wander. I'm not going to say anything more than that. But do you get what I mean?
I 100% agree. And that's a really good question you ask. And I think that's the reason why it'll always be still somewhat a taboo topic. I think it's a topic that is more spoken about now because the emphasis, like you said, on consent is bigger than ever, and as it should be. But the reason why it's got that element of taboo-ness to it is because it's a private thing. It's a private thing. It's a sacred thing. And, people feel like they just want to keep that personal, and that's completely fine as well. I think another pro of being more outspoken about it though, about sex and about sexual activity, is because it can actually teach people a lot of what to do. There's an element of learning on the job and learning as you do it. But I think
good old on-the-job training.
Exactly. But I think there's a lot of benefit in actually learning from people around you, whether that be friends, whether that be, a certain someone that you're happy to go to talk about it. There's a lot of benefit in that, so that, when you do get into that experience and you're having that experience with someone, you feel a little bit more confident in yourself and a little less hesitant than what you might be, because hesitancy might be a reason why someone might not want to engage. And
it's that gut instinct as well.
Yeah, it's that gut instinct. And this is why, there might be that person in your friendship group that is quite hesitant, maybe just because they don't really feel like they know what they want to do and how they want to do it and what to do really. And that's completely fine, but it's a topic that, again, needs to be treated really softly, and you need to be really gentle and make it a space for your friends where you can talk about it collectively from a place without any judgment.
Yeah, from a place of love and support, really. Because, I remember in school, everyone goes at different paces.
Of course.
You know what I mean? I feel like the hormones hit boys and girls quite, in different ways. But
Yeah.
it comes a point when you're 14, 15, and even 16, right? And the hormones start coming in and you're like, you start evolving, right?
Yeah.
But the point I'm making here, though, is it's different for people of all ages, because what may have been true for me at 15 was true for someone at 17 or 18, and vice versa. So to then lecture someone saying, why aren't you sexually active? You're pretty much then having a go at their biology.
Yeah.
You're pretty much telling them, why hasn't your biology caught up to speed with the rest of the group? And I think that's a very unfair and very dangerous expectation to put on someone, because chances are they're going to reach the same things that you're going to reach, just at a later age. They'll reach the same amount of sexual desires as you. They'll reach maybe a similar level of confidence to actually speak about it at a later age. But if you rush that process, it's not going to be a very healthy friendship when they tell you, I didn't want to sleep with that person, but I felt pressure to do so.
Of course. And I think that's part of it, knowing who your true friends are and establishing those true friendships. Because, early when you're 18, when you're 19, you're going clubbing for the first time, there will always be that person in your friendship group egging you on to go kiss that person in the club. They might have had their time with someone and they want to see you have their time. And, you might feel like, actually, I don't want to engage in that. But, if that person is still egging you on, it's really hard to manage, especially when it's all new. And it's fresh. We've all been that. We all know these examples that come to mind. And I think for me, that's when, it was another reason that really allowed me to truly establish my friends, in knowing that who was actually there for me and who was going to support me in situations that might be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more taboo, versus the ones that would just be egging you on and be so loudmouth about it.
And it's funny because, like, when we were younger, we'd boast, as you'd say, like, people would boast, the friends around you would boast. The reason people would boast, and you touched on this earlier, is because it would show a sign of some sort of sexual competency.
Yeah.
It showed that you were socially desirable in some form way. And we know that competency is a sexy thing, because if you're someone who's competent, not just from like a sexual aspect, but, occupationally, they're competent with your health, you're more likely to be able to collect resources. You're more likely to protect yourself, those around you. And that's just a sexy thing. Like, do you reckon, but then again, is it sexy to like if you're competent at doing your tax returns?
Don't think so, mate. Don't think anyone's going to find that sexy.
All right, good, because I'm still trying to figure out how to do that one, tax returns.
It's all right. You can be unsexy in that domain.
All right,
no one's going to judge you. But do you think, we've spoken a lot about this topic from a male perspective, our experiences going clubbing early, being around people in the friendship group that are egging you on, that are trying to get you to do things that you don't want to do. It is tricky for us to.
Is it a gender difference?
Yeah, well, it's tricky for us to compare it to the other side if when it's just us here. But do you think it differs between male and female in how this topic is treated?
I think a bit of both. I mean, at least we're more vocal about it, and I think there's a reason why we were more vocal about it in school. Showing off how many girls you got with at the club was like a sign of an achievement, because it showed you were, as we mentioned earlier, more sexually desirable, right? Or socially desirable. But for men, we also didn't face kind of the consequences of being shamed for it, like slut shaming with women. So I feel like girls, and I could be wrong, so, correct me if I'm wrong here. If any of our female listeners are listening and have any disagreements with me, by all means chime in. But I think whilst that same sort of conversation and dialogue may exist amongst females, it's just not as more public, because I think for a long time girls have been told that, you keep these things private, and it's easier to shame you if you actually do vocalize it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we looked at sexual promiscuity and we treated it differently for men and women biblically, right? Men were permitted to have a lot of sexual partners. Women were not. They were shunned for it. And up until that sexual revolution, before you could literally let people have sex for the sake of pleasure, you were shunning people if they were having sex for pleasure. You were shunning females specifically. And I think that until, I mean, if you're not going to be facing the consequences of shame about something, and in fact you're going to be promoted and you're going to get praise for it, you're going to more likely to do it. But if a girl is going to get criticized for the fact that she decided to get with someone and, you know, it wasn't a long-term partner of hers, if it was a one-night stand, I think you're going to be less likely to engage in that sort of behavior because you don't want to get the social backlash. You don't want to be shamed, and that's a really natural thing. Now, the next question is, why do men get shamed more than women for this? Or rather, why would women get shamed more than men? My theory, and this is a bit of bro theory, is that I think for a long time, sex was viewed as a very impure act. You know, it's a very private thing. It's the reason it's taboo, but it's a very impure act. And when we think of like the female image, we want to preserve its purity. When I say we, I meant society. And when someone is engaging in something that's impure, it kind of collapses that ideal that we had once envisioned. So that's kind of my thoughts about it. There was a famous psychotherapist named Esther Perel. She pretty much talks a lot about this, and she said that, you know, sex for a female was just a part of fulfilling her marital duties at one point. It no longer is, because, as I said, because of the whole sexual revolution thing. But at a certain point, it was. So I think it's hard for society to then kind of decouple those two things and acknowledge the fact that men, like women, do have sexual needs, do have sexual desires. However, the way we treat them is quite different.
Yeah. I think it's better than what it was in terms of, you know, when we were saying, and you were mentioning that back in the day, men would be praised for the amount of people that they were hooking up with, but women typically might be a little bit more denigrated. I think it is getting a little bit better because, you know, you hear things about hot girl summer, hot boy summer, and what those connotations imply. They imply hookup culture. They imply, you know, being free to do whatever you want, to, you know, hook up with whoever you want, which is completely fair. So I think it is getting a little bit better than what it might have been in the past. But I think overall, you're right in saying that it still exists in terms of those stigmas around it.
And look, I would argue, and this might sound a little bit controversial, but I actually don't think it is. I think men will also get criticized if they sleep with a lot of people. I think it's just more likely that a girl would also get criticized, and maybe for less sexual partners. So I think there is a bit of criticism that both sexes receive. I just think it's more harsh on the female end because I reckon, you know, it is a form of social engineering. But, you know, with that being said, you go back to the whole idea of pressure and how it's rampant. And, you know, when me and you were discussing this topic prior, we were thinking about, okay, what are people and what are schools doing, and what kind of workshops are now implemented? And consent's one of it. And so my question, how does consent and those sort of consent workshops in a way remove that pressure because I personally think it does remove that sense of pressure because you're actually able to have a conversation about it.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so good that these topics are now being spoken about, and why a once taboo topic, which still is to some extent, is not as taboo as what it was because of these workshops being implemented and these conversations being had. And a lot of what I feel like they teach is the ability to just be outspoken about your needs in that scenario, and to know that you should never be judged for whatever it is you feel in that scenario, whether you want something to happen for you or to you, or whether you don't want something to happen for you or to you. That is okay, and no one can tell you otherwise. Voicing those things is incredibly empowering, both to you and both to the person that you're having that sexual experience with. It gives you that, not just a voice, but it gives you that self-respect, firstly, that you're able to stand up for yourself and talk about what your wants and needs are sexually in that scenario. But it'll also allow the person that you're having that experience with to hopefully have that respect for you as well. You know, if they're we would hope a mature, respectful sexual partner, they will have that respect for you by you voicing up and vocalizing consent, vocalizing what it is you would like to do, what it is you wouldn't want to do. And what does it do then? It creates collaboration. It creates probably an even tighter bond between you two, because you're actually talking and voicing what it is you're doing, and
You're accepting one another.
You're accepting one another, and it doesn't become a taboo topic anymore, because you're actually speaking out loud, and you're saying what's good, what's not good, what might need to be worked on a little bit more, and therefore the whole pressure surrounding it gets taken away.
And I think that's probably a perfect way to end the show, which is something that we preach, and I preached earlier in this episode, which is do things because you want to do it, not because you feel obligated to do so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On that note, happy Tuesday, everyone. We hope you can take something away from this episode. Bit of a taboo episode, but hopefully there's some little nuggets in here that you can take on board, and hopefully you found relevant as well. So if that's the case, feel free to shoot it off to a friend as well, and let us know what you think.
Sounds good, guys. Have a lovely rest of your Tuesday.
Bye.